Welcome back to Brother Wolf, Sister Moon Divination. Hello, my dear fellow spirit workers. I hope you're doing well and feeling groovy. Today I wanted to talk about debunking. Such an important concept, especially in paranormal psychology, esoteric teachings. And so we should always remain a little skeptical and not be easily tricked or fooled. And so an interesting phenomenon called the Forer effect, also known as the Barnum effect, is a psychological phenomenon where people believe vague general personality descriptions apply to them. This effect explains why horoscopes, fortune telling, and certain personality tests feel eerily accurate. They use broad statements that could apply to almost anyone. Psychologist Bertram Forer demonstrated this in 1948 by giving his students a personality test and then providing them with the same general feedback. Despite the identical descriptions, most students rated them as highly accurate. This experiment highlights how people tend to accept generalized statements as uniquely personal. So the Forer effect is closely related to several other psychological phenomena that include confirmation bias, subjective validation, the halo effect, self-serving bias, illusory correlation, and availability heuristics. So let's look at these really quickly. Confirmation bias is the tendency to seek out and interpret information in a way that confirms pre-existing beliefs. Subjective validation. When people perceive unrelated or vague information as meaningful because it aligns with their expectations. The halo effect, the tendency to let one positive trait influence overall perception of a person or thing. Self-serving bias, the inclination to attribute success to personal ability while blaming failures on external factors. Illusory correlation, seeing a relationship between two variables when none actually exists. Availability heuristic, judging the likelihood of events based on how easily examples come to mind. So these cognitive biases shape how we interpret information, often leading us to believe in things that may not be objectively true. So to unpack a little bit the availability heuristic is a mental shortcut where people judge the likelihood of an event based on how easily examples come to mind. This can sometimes lead to biased decision-making. For example, after seeing multiple news reports about shark attacks, a person might believe that swimming in the ocean is extremely dangerous, even though statistically shark attacks are rare compared to other risks like drowning. Because shark attacks are dramatic and memorable, they feel more common than they actually are. Another example is when people overestimate the danger of flying after hearing about a plane crash. Even though air travel is much safer than driving, the vividness of the crash makes it seem more frequent than it really is. So it really shows how fascinating our brains take shortcuts. So the Forer effect, or Barnum effect, plays a significant role in why people believe in psychic phenomena. It refers to the tendency to accept vague general personality descriptions as uniquely applicable to oneself. This effect is often exploited by astrologers, fortune tellers, and psychics who provide statements that feel personal but could apply to almost anyone. Psychic phenomena such as clairvoyance or telepathy often rely on cognitive biases like the Forer effect. People may interpret psychic readings as highly accurate because they subconsciously focus on the parts that resonate with them while ignoring the vague or incorrect details. Additionally, pattern recognition and memory biases can reinforce belief in psychic experiences. While some theories attempt to link psychic abilities to quantum mechanics, mainstream science does not support direct connection between quantum physics and extrasensory perception. Speaking of quantum physics, there have been some interesting experiments conducted which really make us question reality as we know it. Famously, the Double-Slit Experiment has been cited in discussions about paranormal phenomena, though mainstream science remains cautious about drawing direct connections. The Double-Slit Experiment demonstrates that particles such as electrons or photons behave like waves when not observed, but act like particles when measured. This suggests that observation plays a fundamental role in shaping reality, leading some to speculate about consciousness influencing the physical world. So, some paranormal interpretations assert that this may be due to observer effect in consciousness. Some theorists propose that human consciousness might directly affect reality, similar to how observation collapses quantum wave functions. Quantum entanglement, the idea that particles can be instantaneously connected across vast distances, has been used to speculate about telepathy or remote viewing. Multiverse and parallel realities. Some paranormal theories suggest that quantum mechanics supports the existence of alternate dimensions, which could explain supernatural experiences. However, physicists emphasize that quantum mechanics applies at microscopic scales and does not necessarily translate to the macroscopic paranormal world or events. While intriguing, claims linking quantum physics to the paranormal remain speculative. So, very interesting. And I'll provide a link below to the Double-Slit Experiment, and you can decide for yourself, but it's very interesting. So it seems that when the particles are being observed, they change. Well, how do they know they're being observed, right? So this is one of those mysteries, and of course there are certain, responses from quantum physics and quantum mechanics researchers. So let's take a look at that. The observer effect. In quantum mechanics, particularly the double-slit experiment, is explained through several key principles: wave function collapse, quantum measurement, Heisenberg uncertainty principle, and decoherence. So this is their explanation of why does this happen. So wave function collapse. Before measurement, photons exist in a superposition of states, behaving like waves. When observed, their wave function collapses, forcing them into a definite particle-like state. Okay, that doesn't really explain it. Quantum measurement. Measuring a photon requires interaction, often with another particle, like an electron or detector. This interaction disturbs the photon's state, altering its behavior. So that sounds more like it could be the reason that the machine or whatever they're using to record it itself is giving off some kind of signal or it's electricity, or however it's being powered is maybe doing that. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Observing a quantum particle inevitably changes its momentum or position, making precise measurements impossible without disturbance. Decoherence. When a quantum system interacts with its environment, including measurement devices, it loses its quantum properties and behaves classically. While some interpretations suggest consciousness plays a role, mainstream physics attributes the change to physical interaction between the photon and the measuring device. So, very interesting. I also wanted to talk about Freud and Carl Jung. So, as we've mentioned many times in the videos, Jung is certainly interested in the paranormal and the collective unconsciousness, the collective unconscious. So, how do they agree and where do they disagree? So, for Jung had a deep interest in the paranormal, which influenced his psychological theories. He believed that certain unexplained phenomena, such as synchronicity, meaningful coincidences, could reveal hidden connections between the psyche and the external world. Jung himself experienced paranormal events, including strange coincidences and visions, which shaped his views. Jung did not dismiss paranormal experiences outright, but approached them with curiosity. He explored topics like dreams, spirits, and the occult, believing that they could provide insights into the unconscious mind. His near-death experience in 1944 further reinforced his belief in the existence of deeper mystical realities. Rather than labeling paranormal phenomena as purely supernatural, Jung saw them as psychological manifestations of the collective unconscious, a shared reservoir of human experiences and archetypes. His work continues to influence discussions on the intersection of psychology and the unexplained. So now let's talk about Freud, because at one time they were colleagues and then they had a falling out. Sigmund Freud had a complex relationship with paranormal phenomena. While he was generally skeptical, he did explore certain aspects of the occult, particularly telepathy. In the 1920s, Freud conducted experiments on thought transference and even acknowledged the possibility of telepathic communication in psychoanalysis. However, he remained cautious, not wanting psychoanalysis to be associated with spiritualism or pseudoscience. Freud believed that many paranormal experiences could be explained through unconscious processes, such as repressed desires or psychological projections. He saw prophetic dreams and supernatural visions as manifestations of the unconscious mind rather than evidence of external psychic forces. Despite his skepticism, Freud's interest in telepathy was significant enough that he wrote about it in works like The Occult, Significance of Dreams. His biographer Ernst Jones later downplayed Freud's engagement with the paranormal to maintain a scientific credibility of psychoanalysis. Freud believed that the unconscious mind plays a significant role in shaping perception, behavior, and even what people interpret as paranormal experiences. While he did not claim that the unconscious knows reality in a mystical sense, he argued that it influences how individuals process and respond to their surroundings. Freud's theory connects to prophetic dreams and reality in the following ways: symbolic processing, pattern recognition and intuition, repressed thoughts and manifestation, wish fulfillment. So let's unpack these. Symbolic processing. The unconscious mind operates through symbols and latent meanings. Dreams, including prophetic ones, may reflect deep-seated fears, desires, or unresolved conflicts that the conscious mind does not fully recognize. Pattern recognition and intuition. The unconscious mind absorbs vast amounts of information, including subtle cues from daily life. Sometimes this leads to intuitive insights that feel like predictions, but are actually subconscious deductions. Repressed thoughts and manifestation. Freud suggested that suppressed emotions and thoughts can surface in dreams, influencing how people interpret future events. A dream might seem prophetic because it aligns with unconscious concerns that later manifest in waking life. Wish fulfillment. Freud believed that dreams often serve as a form of wish fulfillment. If someone strongly desires or fears an outcome, their unconscious mind may construct a dream that later appears to predict reality. Rather than supernatural foresight, Freud saw prophetic dreams as reflections of unconscious processes that shape perception and decision-making. And famously, Freud and Jung fell out over these issues, or one of the issues. So Freud and Jung had a significant falling out, and their views on the paranormal played a role in their split. Freud was deeply skeptical of mystical and supernatural ideas, preferring a strictly materialistic approach to psychology. Jung, on the other hand, was fascinated by synchronicity, archetypes, and paranormal experiences, believing they could reveal deeper truths about the unconscious mind. One famous incident occurred in 1909 when Jung visited Freud in Vienna. Jung asked Freud about precognition and parapsychology, but Freud dismissed these topics outright. During their conversation, a loud cracking noise came from a bookcase, which Jung interpreted as a paranormal event. Freud remained skeptical, but Jung predicted another crack would occur, and it did. Freud was disturbed by the incident, and it deepened his mistrust of Jung. Their intellectual break became official around 1913 when Jung rejected Freud's emphasis on sexuality as the primary driver of human behavior. Jung's interest in spirituality, mythology, and the collective unconscious further distanced him from Freud's psychoanalytic framework. Their split marked a fundamental divide between Freud's mechanistic biological psychology and Jung's more mystical, meaning-centered approach. Jung's ideas later influenced fields like parapsychology and transpersonal psychology, while Freud's theories remained dominant in mainstream psychoanalysis. Their relationship was complex, and we're talking about them even today. So, very interesting, and I hope that this was able to sort of give a broader view that on the one hand, of course, science and materialism and empiricism rejects all this stuff. And yet some, speaking of Jung, and then, what's going on with quantum physics? That's weird. Why does it matter? Why would a photon know whether you're perceiving it or not, or observing it, and then act differently? Also, when we consider, again, looking at science, especially at the atomic level, it starts to get very strange. So, let's consider what are some of the assertions. So, quantum mechanics presents a fascinating view of reality, especially considering the fluidity and motion of molecules within solid objects. While classic physics treats solids as rigid structures, quantum mechanics reveals that even in seemingly stable materials, particles are constantly in motion. So, quantum mechanics reconciles reality with molecular motion. Quantum fluctuations, wave function and probability, zero-point energy, quantum tunneling, and observer effect. So, quantum fluctuations, even in solids, atoms and subatomic particles exhibit quantum fluctuations, meaning they are never truly still. Wave function and probability. Particles exist in a superposition of states, meaning their exact position and motion are described probabilistically rather than deterministically. Zero-point energy. Due to Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, which we just talked about, even at absolute zero temperature, atoms retain some vibrational energy. Now here's one that's very strange. Quantum tunneling. In certain conditions, particles can tunnel through barriers, demonstrating that solid objects are not entirely impenetrable at the quantum level. Observer effect. Measurement influences how reality is perceived, meaning the act of observing molecular motion can alter its behavior. Recent research suggests that quantum interactions between measuring devices and physical systems shape observable reality. Some physicists even debate whether reality exists independently of observation. Others argue that quantum mechanics forces us to redefine what is real. So, looking at it from different perspectives, very, very interesting. So the takeaway for this short video on debunking is that we ought to be skeptical. We should debunk things. We shouldn't just take something from an emotional standpoint, because we know that there are certain errors and fallacies in our perception and our cognition. Okay, fine. We also look to science, specifically quantum mechanics, and we start to see, well, reality kind of isn't what we think it is at the molecular level. And then also with the double-slit experiment, why does our observation matter? And when we're not observing it, the particles act in a certain way, and when we do observe it or measure it, it starts changing. Well, what's up with that? Why should it matter? Does it even know that we're watching it? How does it know? So there's a lot of areas where there's still unknowns. So as I've said many times before, of course, science is important. Empirical evidence matters. We should always make decisions based on evidence-based research. But there's still always some elements that we just don't know. And so that curiosity and that unknown I find fascinating. So I hope this helps you with your debunking skills. And hopefully you'll always bring that certain skepticism, but with that open mind to know that, well, even science is pointing out that there's things that we think are a certain way, but they're not. And definitely at the atomic molecular level, they're not what we think. They're moving and they're not necessarily solid like we're perceiving them, right? Very interesting. Okay, folks. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I really appreciate it. And stay groovy, stay curious, and find that balance between science and philosophy, right? All science and no philosophy is just as dangerous as all philosophy and no science. So looking for that happy middle ground, right? All right, folks, be well, and God is love.